Okay, another story. This one is from a book called It Was on Fire When I Lay Down on It by Robert Fulghum. A Unitarian minister is often asked to perform interfaith marriages. Mixed marriage is the common term, but widely differing religious backgrounds are not usually all that's involved. Any wedding wherein the bride or groom is marrying someone outside of the family borders of race or class is mixed. To be asked to perform such a marriage is to join two people trying to cross a minefield without getting blown apart yourself. The paradigm is the wedding of a very lovely young woman from Brooklyn. Huge family, Polish immigrant stock, and Jewish. Her tall, dark, and handsome fiancé hailed from Detroit. Likewise, a huge family, likewise immigrant stock, but Irish and Roman Catholic. Lost my place. The bride's family included a rabbi and a cantor. The other team had some priests and a nun on the roster. It was bad enough that the young man and woman had come all the way out west to Seattle to attend graduate school. Bad enough that they might not marry someone from the old neighborhood, but to fall in love with, and even worse, marry someone not like us was a shameful disaster, a familial earthquake of the first magnitude. Unthinkable. But Ms. Brooklyn and Mr. Detroit were 21 years old and overwhelmed with love. And love, they were quite certain, could find a way through any obstacle. The minister had his doubts, having shrapnel wounds on his soul from having not made it through minefields with such couples before. Now, from here on out, in this story, almost to the very end, the pieces of the plot fall like dominoes. So predictably did it go that I could have made money on side bets as to what was going to happen next. I could have told them, but they wouldn't have listened. Sometimes people have to find out things for themselves. Here's how they saw their options. Plan A, get married by a judge, never tell the folks back east, but, and here comes love again. They really loved their parents, and if their parents found out, which they were bound to, they would be deeply wounded, especially when they found out there hadn't been a religious ceremony of some kind. And so, Plan B, get married by a Unitarian minister and tell the parents a day later, a kind of semi-elopement. The parents had no idea what Unitarians believed, but at least it was a religious deal and in a church. Good idea. Enter the Reverend Mr. Fulghum, which led to Plan C. As long as the wedding was going to be in a church with a minister, they might as well invite just a few friends instead of having only 2 witnesses. And as long as they were inviting those few friends, they might as well invite a few more friends, since they didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And since they were now at the soft edge of the list, where the category friend and the category acquaintance merge, they might as well just go ahead and invite everybody they knew. So now we had a big wedding, a juggernaut, in fact. Because if you have all those people, you have to have a reception. You can't just say, well, this is really a small wedding, so everybody go out somewhere for coffee. And of course, if you're going to have all those people in a reception, then you can't just have a dinky little wedding and be embarrassed in front of all those people. No, sir, the long white dress, rented tuxedos, flowers, attendants, photographers, rings, the whole kit and caboodle. All because they thought having just a few more people would be a nice idea. Guess what comes next? Right. Plan D. They can't do the whole hoo-ha and not invite their families. Minefield, here we come. I note in passing that weddings always tend to get a little out of hand. I've never seen one get smaller or stay on budget. One thing always leads to another. It's kind of like marriage itself, or life. And why not? When it comes to joy and celebration, let it be expansive, always. Anyhow, they stepped on a mine, the big one, called their mothers and invited them to the wedding. The couple called from my house and the phone hasn't worked right since. Probably fried the wires all the way back to Detroit and Brooklyn. The mothers were united in their response. You're marrying a what? A what? followed by silence and a lot of sobbing. Then the daddies got on the line, and the sum of their remarks was, "Come home now, this minute, now." For a month, the mail and phone calls flowed like a waterfall. Uncles and aunts and cousins got in the fray. The rabbi wrote a 30-page letter. The priests and nuns prayed. The families were not coming ever to such an event. The families threatened blackmail, hellfire, and heartbreak. Bribes were offered. No matter. Nothing could dissuade the couple, not even being disinherited, which was the ultimate threat thrown at them by both families. Not that the bride and groom were unmoved. They spent a lot of time in the Reverend Mr. Fulghum's office. The bride bawled, the groom swore, but the marriage was meant to be, come hell or high water, both of which seemed well on their way. But the couple had an invisible shield, love, and a secret weapon, a sense of humor, light hearts. They laughed as often as they cried. 2, they came from tough, resilient folks who had made it the hard way and had always told their kids not to back off when they believed in something. The kids were doing exactly what their parents had taught them to do. They believed in each other. That was that. The tiebreaker in the standoff was a grandma, the grandmother of the groom. By God, if her only grandson was getting married, no matter to a you-know-what, then she was going to be there for the sake of the unborn grandchildren who would need her. Besides, she hadn't approved of her daughter-in-law either, but that had worked out just fine, thank you. Granny was serious. She went and bought a ticket. She was coming to the wedding, period. Thus the dominoes fell. If grandmother was coming, then she would need support. She couldn't go alone, of course, and pretty soon all the Irish Catholics from Detroit were coming. They'd show those Jewish yahoos from Brooklyn what real family loyalty was all about. And they'd bring Uncle Dickie the priest to keep things as godly as possible. Well, you know what happened next. 39 Brooklyn Jews, including grandfather Rabbi, had plane tickets. The wedding began to shape up like a grudge match between Notre Dame and Jerusalem Tech. In physics, they call this achieving critical mass. Sure enough, they all came. And then it really got complicated. The grandfather rabbi begged to at least be allowed to say a traditional blessing in Hebrew at the end of the service. When the Irish Catholics got wind of this, nothing would do but that the grandmother, who had once performed in light opera, should sing Schubert's Ave Maria before the blessing, as a kind of prophylactic to the Hebrew. One side wanted a little incense used, the other side wanted to have some wine in the ceremony and then break the goblet. The bride and groom could do little but nod their heads and smile and say, whatever, to whatever was proposed. Come the great day, Saturday evening, after sundown, to please the you-know-whats, the families marched into the church and sat down. Well, no, dug in would be more like it. Pardon me for a moment. I'm going to fix my little filter and wipe a tear away. This story gets me. Of course, I know what's coming that you guys haven't heard yet. Come the great day, Saturday evening, oh, I said that, after sundown to please the you-know-whats, the families marched into the church and sat down. Well, no, dug in would be more like it. On either side of the aisle. For the time, I would have given 6-5 odds in favor of a free-for-all following the ceremony instead of a reception. But I keep forgetting about love. The Irish Catholics from Detroit loved the groom. No less than the Polish Jews from Brooklyn loved the bride, and for very good reason. They were remarkable young people worthy of pride and respect, even if they didn't have a brain in their heads when it came to choosing a mate. And even the most bitter, jaundiced critic of the match had a hard time ignoring how tall and handsome the groom was, or how enchanting was the bride. And you'd have to be really blind to miss what happened during the ceremony. When the couple said their vows, it was clear they meant every word. And when the bride began to weep, and her groom took her in his arms and wept too, Well, the whole church was awash in tears. I mean, I've seen wet weddings before, but this turned into a communal bath. The whole thing ground to a halt while everybody had a good cry, the minister included. Even Uncle Dickie, the priest, lurking out in the vestibule lest he get contaminated by the proceedings, was seen dabbing his eyes and blowing his nose. What was happening was simple, really. Joy had jumped us all from behind. I'm going to blow my nose. Might as well dab my eyes. Okay. Joy had jumped us all from behind, and about the time the bride said, "Yes, oh yes," when the minister asked her if she took this man, etc., something very old and fine and new and good was plainly happening. Only a head or heart of stone would have missed it. Joy. Unspeakable affirmation of something right. So we wept on for lack of words. It was then that the grandmother of the groom, the grand matriarch of the Irish Catholics, 78 years old, rose to sing Ave Maria. She did not come all this way to let her grandson down. She stood by the piano, took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and delivered the goods. Never have I heard the song offered with more feeling, more passion and fervor. She was magnificent. Not the scratchy, overdramatic sound you'd expect from an aging third-rate opera singer. No, this was the voice of a grandmother distilling her life into the music for a once-in-a-lifetime occasion to honor what she loved and believed in. And when the last lovely note faded and silence held us firm, grandmother opened her eyes, smiled at her grandson, and said, "There now." And the Brooklyn Jews gave her a spontaneous standing ovation. They might not have known what was proper to do in a church, but they knew music, and they knew that Grandma had given it all she had, and they knew great love when they saw it. She was their kind of guy, and a standing ovation was called for. Yay, Grandma! Grandfather Rabbi was not about to be outdone. He walked slowly to stand close by the bride and groom. He reached out and took their hands in his. And then, speaking for Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the Jews of Brooklyn, he laid a blessing on that couple that ought to last them the rest of their lives. I mean, they were blessed. And you didn't have to understand Hebrew to know it. So, of course, as you would hope, the Irish Catholics gave Grandfather Rabbi a standing ovation he will never forget. Yay, Grandpa! That's when the minister sighed a deep sigh of relief, knowing that Joy had won the day, and the possibility of a happy ending to this affair was real. A happy ending. More than anything else in life, we hope for some happy endings, and we were about to have one. What the families had not understood until the end of the wedding was that they had many of the same values and traditions, despite their arguments over metaphors for ultimate things. They believed in family, faith, love, the same God, and the capacity to celebrate those things. The bride and groom rushed off down the aisle to the reception hall where a polka band was waiting. The newlyweds danced. Everyone applauded. Grandfather Rabbi asked grandmother opera singer to dance. The crowd roared and then joined them, and the party was on. Never have I been to such a reception. Never was there such dancing and eating and laughing and singing long, long into the night. Magnificent. 3 days later, when my head cleared, I wondered how it had happened and decided that the skeptical minister had been wrong and the bride and groom right. Love was more powerful than prejudice. Love won out. I don't know that I'm totally convinced, but in this case, It's what the evidence points at. The final score was love 21, evil spirits zip. When in doubt, trust those you love. All of them. Epilogue. A year later, close to the first anniversary of this amazing occasion, I received a postcard mailed from a cruise ship in the Caribbean. From the bride and the groom, I thought. Nope. From the parents of the bride and groom, who have become great friends. So there, one of my favorite stories by a guy whom I adore. His name is Robert Fulghum. That's what he looks like. Okay.